All right, thanks for the opportunity you have given to the Safeguard team on your Jesse seminar series for us to share experiences from our work with you. So for today, I'm going to use the next 30 minutes to share insights on how we've been using the World Bank Environmental and Social Framework to make some important gains on gender and social inclusion on AICCRA CSA demonstration and extension deliveries in Kenya. For this presentation, I'll start first by giving you a brief overview of the World Bank Environmental and Social Framework, and then how we apply it in promoting inclusion in Kenya, and then share highlights of the results and lessons we learned from that application, and more importantly, the essential lessons we have to share with you from this process we have experienced in Kenya. So what is this environmental and social framework of the bank? So, sorry. Sorry, my internet dropped. Is my presentation back?
Yes.
Okay. All right, so I was here. So what is this environmental and social framework of the bank? It is a document that expresses the bank's aspiration on sustainable inclusion and environmental sustainability as well. The framework focuses on promoting green and resilient and inclusive development on development projects funded by the bank. In the process, it seeks to strengthen protection for environment and people, as well as fostering important progress on inclusion. So because it's so key to the bank encourages all project implementers to apply this framework on projects they are funding. And in so doing, the bank encourages ensuring that the project implementation process creates space for participation of all project target beneficiaries, and in the process allowing them to optimize benefit from the project activities. In terms of application, the framework tackles inclusion from the race angle. So it approaches from the lens that some people could be discriminated against from implementation of development intervention. And then from that angle, it encourages the project team then to consider measures that they could take to avoid exclusion of potential vulnerable and as well as minorities. And then if exclusion cannot work, then they are to take measures to minimize exclusion or completely mitigate it. And then if all these things, the project still has challenges and it gets to the bank attention, then the requirement is to consider special measures to compensate those who have been excluded from the project implementation process. So in terms of applying the framework measures and procedures, what is required? The first is to do assessment to identify those who could be at risk of exclusion. And in reality, it's done at two levels, the contextual risk assessment and site-specific risk assessment. In the case of Kenya and in many other countries we have done this assessment, we pay attention to these two issues. And in the case of Kenya, when we did a context assessment, we realized that in the arid and semi-arid regions where most of the project interventions are being implemented, It is women who mostly lead and coordinate household level farming activities. But yet, this is a group of people that are mostly at risk of being excluded from from demonstration activities and from learning on innovations and technologies being promoted by research institutions and government. So we recognize that from that assessment, it is important we pay attention to involvement of women in AICCRA CSA demonstration activities. And on that basis, when we went to the field to do field assessment, we discussed with the farmers. We had opportunity to meet those who might be at risk of exclusion apart from women. Because already with that knowledge, we encourage the implementation team being led by AICCRA to pay attention to women. So in our initial engagement meetings, there were a lot of women involved. And AICCRA also did well in ensuring that we had opportunity to meet women and discuss these issues. And following our discussions across the various project communities, it became very clear that women and persons with disabilities could be at risk of not learning from the project innovations. So we discussed and agreed on measures that would be useful to create the enabling environment and space for women and persons with disability to be involved, learn from the project CSA innovations, and apply it into their work. Honestly, there were some people who were with the view that they are not farmers with disabilities, but the reality is that there are a lot of farmers with disabilities. And most of these farmers, it is the farming activity they do that serve as their sole source of income. So operating at such contexts and overlooking them tends to affect them significantly. And it contributes in deepening the existing inequalities. So we want to emphasize that in our work, it's important you recognize that there are farmers with disabilities. So following discussions we held with them, and based on our other reviews, we suggested to AICCRA and the Alliance team measures they will have to take to create more space for women and persons with disabilities to be involved in the project. And key aspects of these measures are what I have listed here. We encourage them to give opportunity to women and persons with disabilities to be lead farmers. And we will see the outcome of that, whether it worked or didn't work. We also encourage them to use more females in the extension delivery process, because we recognize that women tend to learn better from their fellow women. Therefore, having more women as extension agents in delivering the project technologies could be useful in creating important opening for the farmers to learn from the project. We also reminded them that we have very strict prohibitions on sexual harassment, because at a community level, sometimes some women are not interested in participating in group activities because of previous experiences on harassment. So to make learning spaces around the project innovation attractive to women, we encouraged them to and reminded them on the restriction we have on harassment. Then we also encourage them to select plots at location that could be easily accessible to women and persons with disability, and they did well. And probably even by contest, most of the demo plots we eventually approved to be used for CSA demonstration were closer to residential areas of the communities. And then we also encourage them to organize farmer field days in days and times and venues, and also in languages convenient to women and persons with disabilities. Because experience have shown that if these measures are implemented, it helps in creating space to improve participation of women and other minority groups. So based on these measures, the demonstration activities were given a green light to start. Now let's look at some of the lessons and the issues that came out following this assessment and the measures. First of all, at the leadership level, we succeeded in getting 2 women as field officers supporting the coordination and implementation of field activities. And one of them is Faith. I think Faith joined this seminar. So many of the things I'm saying, if Faith is here, Faith is my witness. And if I get something wrong, Faith, you can correct me then. So the getting women at this level to implement these measures for us worked very well because many of them were more sympathetic. They were sympathetic towards women and wanted to see women as well leading and benefiting from the project activities. And it really helped. Later on in interaction with Faith, one of the observations she shared, and I want to emphasize, was that through our actions, it appears that for the very first time, AICCRA was focusing more on women as lead farmers in their demonstration activities. And then also for the very first time, using persons with disabilities as lead farmers. Mostly they end up using the elite men in the communities. But this time around, the dynamics change for them. And then beyond leadership, we also experience important changes in the extension delivery aspect. We succeeded in getting more women featuring as extension delivery officers. And by the project design, AICCRA field officers were not the frontline extension delivery officers. They rather worked closely with the government, and the government recommended extension officers for them to be used. The essence was to help the government retain some of the important innovation the project was introduced, and then to be able to continue on mentoring farmers beyond the project exists for them to implement it. And here, as I emphasized, in order to create good space for women to learn, we made sure that more women were involved. Initially, there were very few women, but we encouraged and requested additional female officers to facilitate the transfer of key innovation to farmers. And here I want to commend Faith because I remember in one of the words, one phase was requesting for additional female extension officer. The men were kind of resisting that they also wanted to be part to benefit from whatever is happening. But Faith stood on her ground in making sure that we had an additional female extension officer. And that did help a lot. And later on in a reflection shared by one of the officers, she said by we encouraging them to be at the front line to transfer the project innovation to farmers, particularly women, it helped in getting them open up to extension advisories. And then also it eliminated some suspicion that usually their husband harbor around their wife interaction with the male extension agent. So it's an important thing we have to know that having more female extension delivery agent is key if we intend to promote women participation in our project activities, particularly when we are creating sessions for them to learn on innovations that we have created. Now, in terms of the farmer level, what happened? Based on these conscious measures we took, we succeeded in getting 17 of the 30 lead farmers being women. The fact is initially they were not 17, I think they were 7. If you remember, when we did the initial screening in February 2022, 2, they were 7th, and later on, they became 10th after the screening in October 2022, and which to me was very key. And it turned up that even most of these female lead farmers were more committed than the men. And then again, through our encouragement, we succeeded in getting 2 lead farmers who were persons with disabilities. And the point is, with women and persons with disabilities being lead farmers, it encouraged more women to visit the project demo site for learning, and also persons with disability to visit project demo site for learning. In fact, even you draw the community members' attention to the fact that they need to encourage persons with disabilities in their communities also to visit the project demo site for learning, and which was key because they were not doing it and they were not conscious of doing it, and we helped create that consciousness. Now, what lessons did we learn from having more women as lead farmers? Through our monitoring activities and interaction with women and other farmers, we made a farmer field it. Some of the issues that came out are these that I have to share with you. There could be more, but I want to emphasize on these ones with you. First, according to the women, it helped create visibility around their farming activities at the community level, because it's not because of our interventions that they started doing farming. They had been doing it, but yet they have not had opportunity to showcase their farming activities to other farmers in the community. So for us, nominating them as lead farmers and inviting additional farmers to visit their farm site for learning, it then helped them in getting visibility of the activities that they are doing, and also letting the men know that the women are good in farming. And then because they were the lead farmers and were driving our activities directly through them, it put them at the forefront in making decisions on the input to plan on the farm, decision around labor, decision around fertilizer and other applications, because the extension officers were regularly interacting with them on the progress on their demo plots and the kind of inputs and things that they will need for the crops. So we didn't need to reroute decision making through their husband, but needed to do it directly through them. And then also it then gave them opportunity to make decisions around climate resilient seed systems that through the demonstration we had introduced to them, because by putting them at the forefront, they became very much open to the project technologies. And then because they were leading, they became the first recipient of the new innovations we're introducing. And then through them, the information diffusing to other farmers in the community. And then, one woman has something, other women becomes curious. And then it lead to information exchange and and then in that process, helping to strengthen the informal communication networks that women use to obtain knowledge about farming practices at the community level. So somebody will ask, so what were the reaction of the men when we tried to work through the women to demonstrate the project innovations? First of all, the women who were selected to lead the CSA demonstration received very good support from their husband. There wasn't a single case where our intervention led to some form of tension or rejection on the part of the husband. They were very much supportive. And when we did the initial and environmental and social screening and visits, in most cases, the husband joined us in our meeting discussion and even visits to the site. And of course, we also needed to check that to ensure that there was harmony at home for women to do these demonstration activities. And then also during the demo activities, most of the husbands supported their wife activities. We witness this ourselves, and we receive testimony from the husband and the wives as well. And in most instances, when we went for monitoring, we encountered instances where the men were on the plot driving away bears that had come to eat the sorghum the project has introduced. Other men who were not necessarily husband of the women were also quite open to learn from the farming activities of the women. So not just because women were leading, they were unwilling to visit their demo site to learn. For instance, there was one particular community that the lead male farmer demo activities failed because of excessive depressed rainfall. But yet he was very much enthusiastic to visit the nearby female lead farmer plot to learn of the project innovations. And just to emphasize that by it means that working through women, particularly in the context of Kenya, to demonstrate farm knowledge and innovation does not necessarily discourage men from coming to the demo sites to learn. And therefore, going forward, it's important that if we want to promote balanced participation, we prioritize using more women as lead farmers. One other important outcome from this approach was that it drew more women closer to the project innovation, particularly the climate or the drought resilient seed system introduced to them. And because they are more particular about their household food security, they were then able to make informed decisions around the seed systems, leading to higher demand of Jota beans in particular. And the counterfactual would have been this: if we had used men, perhaps they couldn't have appreciated the seed system that would have been relevant for their household. And therefore, perhaps the kind of buying we witnessed on Jota beans, we couldn't have experienced it on the demonstration activities we did in Kenya. So that's one important thing we need to note. So there were a lot of demand, and which at the beginning of this rainy season, the project also made effort to supply more Jota beans to the farmers. And this female lead farmer at Makindo, somewhere Makindo, had this reflecting to share with us. And it is an important feedback I want to emphasize for our attention. He said, as women, we are the breadwinners of our household. So we pay keen interest to our household food security, nutritional needs, and productivity of our farms. We should therefore always be given the priority to be the first to learn from technologies that improve smallholder farming, as you have done through this AICCRA project. So this is a feedback she shared, and I want to bring it to our attention. Now, what important lessons do we want you to take away from this particular experience we had in Kenya? First, we want you to note that extension services should not always be used as a means of transferring farm technology, but should be purposed to deepen inclusion and social equity. And then also, we want to emphasize that if you are promoting exchanging deliveries and introducing technology at the community level, it is key to do context-specific assessment to be able to know those who might be at risk of exclusion, and even how you have to tailor it so that you can get effective participation of women and other minority groups. And as I earlier on indicated, working through women lead farmers does not necessarily diminish men involvement. It rather increases participation of both sexes. And therefore, if there's an opportunity to work through more women, we should prioritize that to get to deliver our extensions. And then on the basis of this experience, we want to encourage all clusters henceforth to use more women as lead farmers for CSA technology transfers. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Adams. Yeah, it's very insightful what you've been doing, especially in Kenya, based on this webinar. We have learned a lot that you are working with women as a way of also delivery of technologies as extension, but also for them to host demonstrations. And the result has been that they're now being used in decision making, which is a plus. It's also it's a result for us. Now I open the floor for discussions, or if anyone has got questions. Over to you, colleagues.
Could I ask? Hello.
Hello.
Yes,
Yeah,
please. I cannot
okay.
see the
Yes,
hands.
yes.
Yeah, so just go ahead.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you very much, Adams. I think this is very informative. My question is that I think you have shown, you have demonstrated that men seems to be changing. I think in their attitude towards. They seem to be demonstrating much more as compared to what they were doing before. But what I wanted to know is how are you sort of monitoring this this particular process? Because from I think your initial presentation, you mentioned that there were some men who were quite resistant to maybe incorporating women as extension officers. So how are you sort of tracking all the change over time? And then I also see that you actually have a very good result in that you've managed to integrate Jesse within the extension system. But what I wanted to know is beyond the intervention areas, how are you bringing these findings, which could be interesting to the agricultural extension system? It's at much higher level. How are you communicating these findings so that in the end, they might actually help to inform decisions which are made at national level in terms of maybe including gender as part of the extension training as well? So thanks, and back to you.
All right, thank you. So with this experience, I think the next steps is to keep sharing it at the right spaces for people to know. And here is the beginning. And beyond here, we've also made an effort to make sure that this experience is broadly shared. So I have written a blog on it, and it's been published at the AICCRA project website. So in a sense, I expect that many AICCRA project partners have had opportunity to read and appreciate what happened in Kenya. And then we also have a video version of this presentation, which even gives more vivid clarity and speeches from and images and speeches from the field. And I'll share the link here so that those who are interested can watch the video and also read the blog. And but beyond these levels, the practically on the AICCRA project, I've been having one-on-one meetings with some of the Jesse focal people and sharing this experience to inspire them. And then also through our assessment, pointing out to them some of the measures they can take in their respective countries to deepen inclusion. And one of such instances, Faustina, based in Ghana. Faustina is not here. If Faustina were to be here, she should have emphasized on the serious meetings and recommendations are provided for her. So if anything at all, and I'm to share another batch of experiences and results, it should be coming from Ghana because we have done extensive work to consider practical ways by which the AICCRA Ghana cluster can deepen inclusion on the project CSA demonstration activities. So it's an iterative process. The demonstration activities in Kenya has not ended. They are doing second batch. AICCRA is leading one team to do another set of demonstration, and then the alliance team is also doing another batch of demonstration. And at all these levels, we keep emphasizing on these measures, and we are waiting to see the outcome of this second batch so that we can have a balanced view of how women involvement or involvement of persons with disability is in the contest, and then be able to generate more useful lessons that are the right forum we can share with the government. So we haven't made any deliberate attempt to share with the government officials, but it's something on our radar we will do at some point in time. Then the first question relates with men involvement. I guess so. And in terms of men involvement, in the context of Kenya, I think it was a little bit easy because traditionally it's women who have been leading and coordinating household level activities. So most men were very much used to seeing their wife leading. But in other contexts, it's not necessarily women. But that notwithstanding, given the context, we don't also necessarily need to force women to be lead farmers if women are not the active managers of household farming activities. And I want to emphasize on the fact that one thing I have learned is that across the different countries we are working and beyond, there are certain specific niches that along the agri value chain, women actively participate. So if we intend to improve the condition of and experience of women around agriculture, then as I indicated, it's important we do contextual analysis to identify these niches and tailor our interventions around that. For instance, in Ghana, particularly in the middle belt of the country, most women are actively involved in doing the off-taking work and also in agro processing. So there, if you want to improve the experience and the gains of women from agri, you should rather focus on improving challenges or tackling challenges they face around off-taking and also in agro processing. In that case, you succeed in helping women and other minority group. And the experience could also be different in Mali and elsewhere. But notwithstanding, where opportunity presents itself, we try to emphasize on these matters. And regarding the men, they didn't have problem, and many of them are okay. And then there's one underlying issue I want to emphasize on, and that is the issue of land ownership and access to land for farming activities. In Kenya, ownership, as it is in many other African countries, is largely sit with men. But even though men on paper or publicly are those who are known to be having the land, the women equally get access in using the land. So in terms of land, it shouldn't be more about who is owning it, but it should be more about who is having access to it. And once women are having access and they have enough room to operate on it, in our operation, we need to recognize that and rather encourage that. Thank you.
Thank you so much. There's a hand from Anna.
Yes, thank you so much, Adams, for this excellent presentation and the findings. Would you please share the blog link so that
Okay.
we can go ahead in the chat room?
Okay.
That's my first question. And then the second question was related to your latest comment as to land ownership and use. As you mentioned, the women are involved in transformation and downstream value chain activities. So if they cannot show the ownership of the land as a collateral, how does that affect their capacity to raise financing for their activities when they go to financial institutions such as microfinance institutions or commercial banks if they need to raise additional funding for their activities? Over.
All right, thanks for this important question. Yes, it's key, particularly if they want to raise additional funding to support their operation. But this is a reality. Even in Kenya, most of these lands that the men claim to have ownership on is they derive their authority from the customary arrangement, but not from title deeds. So many of them don't have title deeds on the land, and the few that have had title deeds, they register it in the name of in their name, and which is transferable to their wives and children after exit. So first of all, I want to emphasize that most of these farmers we work with were not having title deeds. That's the first case. Only few instances, and for that instance where the female farmer had a title deed on the land, it was the land that he inherited from the husband after he had died. And I think they brought it together while the husband was alive. So that is one thing. And in the other countries equally, most of the lands are communally owned, and where most of them don't have title deeds. And without title deeds, is it's a little bit challenging for using the land as a collateral security for bank loans. But the reality is we need to understand in this context how these women farmers get access to microcredit. In Kenya, one of the things I learned is they get access to credit through cooperative arrangement. So most of them have cooperative group. Most of them have cooperative group they operate, and through which they are able to self-raise money to support their activities, and which is key. So through the cooperative arrangement, they are able to create the requisite, if they want to go for external support, they're able to create the requisite collateral security to take bulk cash from a financial institution to resource themselves and later sublet to other individual farmers. But most of the time, when they do cooperative and pool funding, they are able to generate some resources to support each other based on trust without necessarily requiring them to raise collateral securities. So once again, context matter, and it's important we pay attention to context. And then still on the land issue, you see the ownership arrangement is customary. And customary means people inheriting the lands based on their customary relationship and arrangements at the family level. So practically, in some of the patrilineal arrangements, the women are not able to, inherit land. It's the men who inherit it. And once they inherit it, their wife get opportunities to work on it. And once they have inherited it from their family, it becomes very difficult then creating that share ownership with their wives. Given so many other reasons, for the fear of divorce, and then I have share, how do I get it back, and other things. And also to sustain that same cultural practice of the man transferring the land to the sons and things like that. When they are in marriage, they don't necessarily transfer ownership arrangement to their wives. So kind of, you want to face this, then something has to be done around the land ownership arrangement, which from a bit of experience I've had with our traditional system, it will be very difficult to change that. But overall, even when it comes to land, access to land in most contexts is changing. Now in Kenya, the new land bill I think introduced in 2016 has created a different arrangement for people to be able to buy and lease lands for themselves. And I think we encountered another instance of, if Faith, you remind me, there's this woman we met, and she had gone to buy the land with the husband, and they had used part of their land for their residential area, and also part of the land for farming. And I think they had share ownership. And I think for such instance, they could the wife could equally use the title deeds on the land to assess loan if necessary. Thank you.
Thanks.
Faith, maybe you might add, since we are asked to remind Adams, you might add from what Adams has said. Faith.
Yeah, he said that women, I didn't get it clearly.
The woman at the woman whose residence was closer to the prisons. You know that woman, I've forgotten the name of the village.
Yeah. Yes,
and then there's
yeah.
another woman who was closer to a place that had formerly been used by the Chinese to do quarry work. You know, these two women were jointly owning their farmlands with their husband.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I was making reference to the point that for such instance, it could be possible for them to use the title deeds on the land as collateral, given the negotiation and agreement they will reach with their husband to source loan to support their activities.
Yeah, I think that is true, and that is okay. That is with the communities that you are working with. Our women are able to have an agreement from their husband with the land that they've acquired together, and they're able to get loan facilities from the banks. And this is not just in that area; even in other counties, we are facing a similar scenario whereby the men are owning the land collaterally with their wives, but women are able to get even small loans to cater for other farm activities, like buy other farm inputs. So this is something that is very normal there. Even when you interact with the community, they will tell you that, yes, this land is, we are owning it with my husband, but when I want to access credit facilities, I am not denied that opportunity with my husband. I'm able to use the title or deed or whatever we have to access the financial facility that one may need. So it's really a normal scenario here in Kenya. We don't have a problem with men having ownership, and women are so comfortable because they know the land is theirs together.
Thank you so much, Faith. I have one question. You are indicating that in the activities that you do, you also have some female extension workers. Is it by coincidence that they were employed, that there are more female extension workers, or you influenced the government to transfer or employ more female extension workers so that women could feel free to be expressing their opinions? Secondly, it's on the youth. You've talked more about women and people living with disabilities. I don't know if you are also working with the youth. Thank you, and over.
Okay,
Yeah.
so Faith, do you want to start, or I should start?
Yeah, you can start, then maybe
Okay.
I can add on.
All right. So when it comes to extension delivery, the experience we had, it's more of coincidence because in the contest, we were able to find women who were extension agents. So granted, we couldn't find any woman as extension agent. Perhaps those who delivered the extension services would have all been men. But the point is that even if they are women and you don't insist on getting them, sometimes you won't get. And that was also my experience. So at some point in time, Faith had to insist that we want a woman in this case, and we had a woman. If not, probably it could have been a man. And for the AICCRA project in Kenya, one thing I want to emphasize is that in order to ensure that there are more female experts in the agri sector, the project is also working with a number of universities. And one activity you are doing is introducing curriculum on climate smart agriculture, where they encourage the universities to allow more female students to do research and demonstration around climate smart innovations. So for the various universities the project has partnered with, their on-farm activities, and most of such activities are being led by female students. If you watch the video, you will see illustration from such instances. So it's a way of creating space to train more female students who eventually will become extension agents in the future in appreciating climate smart innovation, so that once they can be at the forefront, champion it. And it's also a way of creating space to encourage more women to study agric, so that ultimately there will be more female extension agents. And then the second question on youth. So it's something that when we went to do the screening, because the project emphasis is on youth, we took into consideration. But the fact is, in Kenya, is very real to get youth as farmers, and I guess the reason is it's easier for them to raise money through other economic activities than doing farming. So most of them are not into farming. If you want to find youth farmers, it's really very difficult. We pushed. So Faith even made an attempt in, I don't know, is it in Kalawa? Kalawa Award.
In
Yeah.
Taita.
Yeah, Taita.
Kishamba. Yeah.
Yeah, we see Kishamba to work through a youth farmer as a lead person. I mean, his initial interest and commitment was great, and we decided to consider him as a lead farmer. But ultimately, when activity started, sometimes it was difficult to get him aside. And I think the Faith and Co had to use other farmers in taking care of the farm. So it was a very challenged, and once again, it is a contest. So once they are not there to do the farming, you cannot force them. And then if the intention then is to support the youth, it's then required doing different form of assessment to appreciate what the youth do around farming activities or agriculture, and therefore structuring your intervention to target that particular niche. But in this case, it was difficult getting youth as farmers at the community level. Thank you. I think border is a reason. Many of them are border riders. So
just
you
to add on, just to add on the issue of youth, it's actually what Adam's saying is true. It was a challenge in the previous season. Actually, we had to drop out that male youth farmer, because he got impatient with farming. He wanted quick money, but we were not able to sustain him, because I think he had to move out to work in the city to look for other better opportunities. But we are still encouraging youth farmers during field days. We actually invite them during such forums to ensure that they actually see that this is actually the farming and practicing climate smart agriculture is actually something they can engage in. And we have had a good representation. So we believe that we'll be able to pick up, and we are still recruiting more youth farmers. So even as you're speaking, we have a new youth female farmer. I think, Adams, you're yet to see her. She's doing well in Usikishamba. She replaced the male farmer. Yeah. So, and again, to add on the issue of what Therese you said about whether we are having coincidence having more women extension farmers, it was not a coincidence. Actually, you know how government operates. When you go to government offices, you'll find that actually most of these offices are being occupied by male workers, and which is the same even in our project sites. We have more of male extension officers. But when we were starting the project, we prioritized, just as Adam has said, we had to talk with the government officials and we emphasized that we need to have women extension officers. Even though they are few, we prioritize working with them. But we went a step further to recruit even trainer of trainers. We call them TOTs. We have focused more on these people and we have engaged more women trainer of trainers who are actually working as extension officers. So they're working together to ensure that extension services reach our farmers. So it's something that we had to put more extra effort to ensure we have more female. And they're actually appreciating because most of these women are now being reached with extension services. Thank you.
Okay, that's interesting. Thank you so much. Are there any other questions or remarks? No? Okay, thank you so much, Adams and Faith, for this wonderful session. Okay. We have learned a lot from you. I suggest that from other than the blogs, maybe we could also, you've done a lot. Maybe we could also write an info note.
Yeah, sure. So even the bank has requested such an info note, but they want they want us to elevate it beyond the Kenya example by including examples from other countries, and so that it kind of shows a more comprehensive progress the project has made in improving inclusion and also the diversity of how do you call it, issues tackled and the like. So it is something that is on my table. I'm supposed to take the lead and later bring you on board, you and Sophie, and then we get Rich also to review it for us. So so ultimately you get to know about it. But one thing that has slowed me down on this is that there are some important innovations in other countries that are yet to mature, and we want them to mature before we write the info notes, so that once we write, we can effectively articulate our progress on those innovations as well.
Yeah, okay, it's well understood.
Okay.
Thank you so much for this, and it's now 3:00. Maybe we can close. We have recorded this webinar for those people who have failed to attend. I tried to reach out to others, but others are in class, others have traveled. So although they confirmed to attend, but they failed to attend. So they will have access to the recording, and I also share it with Riz and Amy, because normally they put on AICCRA website what we have discussed, in summary, what we have discussed during our webinars. At this point, I say thank you so much. Have a wonderful day wherever you are. Thank you and see you later.
All right.
Okay, bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye.